So in today's episode, I guess you could call them episodes. We're still not super formal about this, but anyways, we have a strike to make. And we have the Selnick strike. So I want you to start me off. It's the start of the strike. The players have just rolled up. What's the first encounter they're going to go through?
So I think first encounter will largely be dependent upon how the party wants to approach the layer itself, which will, they could just go up the main route, kind of take the more traveled route, follow the passageways or the pathways up to the layer that Selnix's crew takes. So following the route that the punk pikes take and all of Selnix's combat crews, which I think will probably just be in that regard a combat encounter. There will just be guards on the outside who will begin to raise the alarm, but the party has to fight their way inside. I think something similar to this could also be using their jump ships to fly in. And kind of hot drop land onto the outskirts of the facility, which will have its own risks and I think require some sort of like jump ship skill challenge or ability challenge, where they have to kind of like navigate, try to fly into the guns, avoid radar, stuff like that. Failing it will damage their ships, could potentially result in their ships being destroyed or crashing. And then I think another way up could be more of a stealth approach, trying to trek their way through some of the Venusian jungle or climb up some of the cliffs that lead up to Thelnix's lair, stuff like that. I think that's the approach, but I think that I'm kind of intrigued by the idea of letting the approach itself be in the player's hands. Just put that agency over to them. Because I'm trying to go for a little bit of a non-linear experience.
So because we were talking a little bit about the heat mechanic that you wanted them to interact with, where they basically have to decide, are they going to increase the heat or are they going to take the hard way? It's less a hard way versus a soft way kind of thing. It's you have your direct approach, which is if you want to do your high combat, you want to come in here with people who can't stealth and who can't sneak around. And they're just going to go combat after combat after combat. Well, that's going to increase your heat, which is going to increase the difficulty of your future combats. And, of course, we had in general, our strikes have the round limit, where you have to finish the strike within 10 rounds, or you fail. And you can regain rounds by getting through combats very fast. But you're talking about a mechanic with this heat that is a way to spend your rounds to reduce your heat, it was?
Yeah, and vice versa.
And vice versa. And I think, in general, the kind of the core of this strike, if we just step back and we look at our big tapestry here, and we're like, all right, the dominant color in this tapestry is this heat versus strike timer mechanic. And I am very, very much of the mindset that the very first thing you should be doing at the beginning of the strike is teaching them this mechanic. And it either has to be done in the strike itself, or it has to be otherwise conveyed to them through universe information. It could be conveyed to them through something like Erebus or whoever's in charge of the strike. Is able to tell them, like, hey, I already tried to send a team in there, but this is what happened. They tried going in guns blazing, and they got absolutely destroyed, and we lost a guardian. I'm going to recommend a stealth team. So we immediately put the fire team in the mindset of being stealthy and trying to stealth, which is going to push them towards the encounters where they actually have to make choices to interact with that mechanic.
Right. Yeah, I like that. And additionally, too, what we could do is make it so that way I like Erebus or the field commander or whoever, kind of instructing or informing the party of that. And it could also be that it could be from that fire team's report as well, of where it's like, hey, we noticed, we tried to go in fast and loud, and basically things got harder, right? Like they were just coming, because it doesn't necessarily need to be that Erebus is like Because I don't necessarily want to steer people away from doing it the high friction route. Like if they just want to go, fuck it, high speed,
Yeah. But
burn
basically
through it.
it's making sure they understand what they're getting into.
Yes.
And especially with our player base, and when you think about just the actual people who are probably going to go on this strike. So we've got Thanatos for sure is going to be going on this strike. I don't actually think Thana's a stealth character.
No, God, no.
But our
no,
player
no,
base
God,
in
no.
general, if you tell them that if you go in, head first, and you're going to hit the toughest forces if you go in head first, and they fail, then it becomes an issue. Then it becomes, well, it's not really an issue. It becomes, we told you this was going to happen. You made the bed, now lie in it.
Yeah, exactly. And we can also do that as well if maybe the first time we run the strike, we don't present all of the approach options. Either way, we could just have it be where the introductory encounter also very clearly illustrates what's going on, right? Like they rock up, they roll initiative as they're fighting, end of round 1 in the fight, there's the descriptor of, a servitor or some shank master or the captain or whatever, like calling out over comms, and they begin to notice the traps and stuff arm around them, stuff like that, right? Letting them know that this is like your Metal Gear Solid or Splinter Cell kind of moving through a facility, right? The louder you are,
yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
okay.
No, so imagine if this was a video game. If this was a video game made in 2007, because that's kind of what the average TTRPG experience is similar to.
Mm-hmm.
What I could imagine happening is a series of events of how this campaign mission would be structured. Is you would have a very basic beginner encounter, and if you stealthily take down all the creatures there, and it could be 5 dregs and a shank, right? It doesn't need to be complicated, but if you stealthily take it down, then you don't get the plus heat. Your heat stays at 0. Mm-hmm. But if you take them down with noise, the video game would then show you additional enemies showing up to guard the gate you need to get through.
Right, which, would be meta knowledge for us.
I think we can set it up, though, so that it narratively works. Imagine if they come in and they're at a high point, right? They're at a cliff overlooking the entrance to the lair. They take out a little encampment up here. They take out some of the guys, but they're loud, and they were able to send off a little distress thingy. We can then describe, as they're looking over, looking off the cliff, looking down across the valley at the entrance to the Selnix's lair, there's more enemies showing up, and it seems like they're on alert, right? We can immediately show them that. And we can show them the effects of being loud. And it's not severe enough at this point that they can still choose to try to take a stealthy option. Mm-hmm. But they can also, just go straight into the next encounter, which is fight them at the door. And so if we're thinking about this just one path at a time, so if we give them the really super simple encounter, they either take it out stealthily or they take it out not stealthily. If they do it stealthily, nothing changes. Right. Or we can show that the guards at the door to the lair or at the entrance to the lair, what the fuck ever, are kind of being lazy and playing games or whatever.
Could even be that some of the more automated or defenses that need to be activated that are a part of the facility when they're moving through are deactivated, right?
Yeah,
so they move to an area. Up. Yeah, there's the immediate freeze as they recognize the shape of a web mine on the ground. They immediately go to dive for cover and then realize it's not powered on, right? Because they've been sneaky, right? I think that's definitely some language and descriptor. You're right that we could add to reward the players, showing them that, But one of the inverses of that is I do moving stealthily and stuff like that is slower. So, we do have the strike clock to consider. So how do you think that comes into play here?
Okay, so and I have to back up and I have to ask another question, which is that all right, so when you're imagining the strike, are you imagining how many encounters are you imagining between the start of the strike and entering Selnix's compound, facility, layer, whatever you want to call it?
Oh, not many.
Okay.
I think probably like one encounter on the exterior, which is probably the guards, right? Taking out the guards and actually getting into the dungeon proper, right?
Okay. So I do. Okay.
So
if I
maybe a second one if they just decide to walk up the main path, right? Because I think, being attacked by punk pikes leaving the lair, it's kind of interesting.
Okay, so if we have them, so I really like the idea of we give them the basic encounter and we can, to save time, because, we have, 3 to 4 hours, we are pretty limited here. So to save time, we just ask them if they want to, you say, there's some dregs out here, how are you trying to take them out? We just ask them how they're going to do it. It's some dregs, we're not going to roll initiative. So they do that, and then you as a GM decide, does that qualify as stealthy or does that qualify as heat? And if it's the stealthy, then the next encounter is they arrive at a place where they can observe the entrance to the facility and they can see that there's some defensive turrets that aren't powered on yet. The guards are playing games, and possibly also they can see that there's another way they can possibly get in, maybe like an air vent or something like that. But it is going to take more time. But anyways, so if they do it combat-wise, they just go from that encounter, they go to the next one, but when they roll up on it immediately after rolling initiative, you say, oh, and also, the stuff is turned on and the guards are here and more people show up. And they don't have the option to notice the second entrance because they just went straight combat.
Right.
But if they notice the second entrance in classic, again, I'm imagining a 2007 linear campaign video game. It's going to be a vent of some kind, obviously. Yeah. Yep. And they crawl through it, and possibly we have them make their stealth checks to crawl through it. And then from there, since at this point, they've taken 2 stealth options, one after another, I would put them in an encounter that rewards good stealth. I would put them in the Metal Gear sort of scenario where it's about, there's not that many people, there's lots of cover, you can sneak around.
Right.
But if they went the combat route, They fought the original group, they come to the second group, they fight them. We can present them with a choice, because I don't want to have to railroad them into
I agree.
One of these options immediately early on. We have to give them a choice between either pulling back or diving straight through. And I think there should be a diving straight through option, where it's just A, B, C, and then you're at Selnix and you fight Selnix. And it's literally a straight shot from the front to the back of the facility.
Yep, I agree. I do very, very much agree.
And I think what we can have them do is when they get to the second choice, we can present them with a decision of they can either proceed directly through the facility and go into the next encounter, or they can run off the main path, and it's going to cost them rounds or strike rounds to run off the main path, but it will reduce their heat. And if we time it just right. So if we say, by the time they're out of the door encounter, we say their heat is at 1, and you can spend 2 rounds of your strike timer to go into a side encounter and reduce your heat by 1. We can actually, to save ourselves on dev time, we can send them into the same encounter that's the stealth encounter, because their heat has been returned to 0, which is the encounter they end up at next if they have a heat of 0.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity for them to either get loud, which would increase their heat by 1, and it was, okay, so what we have to do is we are making a flow of encounters based on the heat value.
Right. Yeah. In my noggin, I was honestly something similar to what y'all did for the Black Garden patrols. I think could genuinely work really, really well. And because you guys had that kind of tiered system. Let me go pull up that one real fast. Was it Black Garden? Nope, that's not it. I always lose this. Basically, the way that it worked, you guys had your kind of like a flow chart, but the way that the numbers worked, it was you had encounter 1, and then going from encounter 1 could jump you to encounter 2, but it could jump you all the way to encounter 5. But progress should still be forward, no matter what. And really what we could do on that is actually the inverse. What we could do is have heat subtract from the die roll of the encounter to represent that if you're going through stealthy, it's more likely that you're able to bypass encounters. So we could have like a little table that goes from, I don't know, we have it be like a little 1d6 table after each encounter. But the idea here is that, the number here gets modified by heat. So, we roll a d6, and then if the heat is super high, there's these encounters still move forward closer to Selnick's. But you have to engage with more encounters, more traps. And so, these negatively modified encounters, these encounters that you can only get to by having enough of a heat that, your die roll is subtracted by your heat enough to throw you into the sub table, basically. Becomes things like traps, locked doors, heavy encounters, things like that.
So we're designing a system where, so if we just look at the basics of the system that you're imagining, it's that you have an encounter table, and Selnick's is an encounter on the table, and you're trying to roll. You're trying to roll the Selnick's encounter. You make your roll, and what I would almost do is have Selnick's, like if it's a 1 through 10 table, I'd have Selnick's at 1, and then your heat gets added to the roll. So the higher your heat is, if you have a heat of 1, it would be impossible to roll it. I mean, you'd have to fiddle around with the numbers a little bit more.
Sure.
But the basic concept being, however you want to do your math, is that the higher your heat is, the less likely you are to roll Selnick's.
Yeah, that could work. That could work.
So I'm trying to think about a way that we could do this that's not super oppressive or difficult to design, is another way to put it. Because if this is something that we want to employ in the future, we want to make it simple enough that it can be dropped into other strikes, and that we can hand it to GMs, and we can say, hey, when you're designing a strike, you can just follow this system. It can't be too complicated.
No, I agree. And I think what we could do, hang on, here's how I'm thinking about this now. Yeah, that'll work. So I don't even think we make Selnick's an encounter to be rolled at all. I think what we do for Selnick's is like a little checkmark block tracker, where basically once you complete X number of encounters, you fight Selnick's. You're in the boss room. But the higher your heat is, the worse the encounters that you face on the way.
Okay, yeah, kind of what we were talking about just earlier. Just a basic, heat doesn't determine what your next encounter is. It just determines how many enemies are in that encounter sort of situation.
Sure. Kind of, yeah.
Another way that we could represent this is we could have, it could just be the same encounters for both high heat and high stealth. It could be the exact same encounters. It could even be a linear path. It's just that if you succeed on an encounter with stealth, you get a bypass that you can hold on to and spend on any of the next ones.
Could do that. Yeah, genuinely could do that. Yeah, I don't hate that. Really what we could do as well is Actually, I like that bypass a lot, but what if we baked that bypass into that concept that we had for the ability for the Guardians to just go, screw it, we're going to push in as loud as we can? What if we literally tell them, like, hey, you can dramatically increase the heat, right? It goes up by like 2 or 3, but you gain the benefits of a bypass card.
We could do that too.
Yeah.
I think this is actually far more dynamic for our players to engage with. First, it does reduce the amount of dev that we have to do for this strike, because we can create a very basic version of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it just needs to exist for us to get the mechanic in front of players and see their reactions to it.
Yes, true.
If we go back to just imagining the strike and you're playing through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say we get through our basic encounter and that either you take the fire team out stealthily or you don't. They go to the door encounter next. Meta-wise, we could tell them the exchange here, which is that you can either choose to increase your heat on this door, which will make the encounter more difficult, but you will earn a bypass that you can use on future encounters. Because your power is so overwhelming, you can just play it to blast through one of the future encounters. Alternatively, you can take the stealth route. Which, if you're able to succeed on your stealth route, if you're able to, roll your stealth checks, you get past this encounter without making any attacks, and you earn a bypass for a future encounter. Do we even actually... So for the sake of working on these mechanics, do we even include the stealth angle?
I actually don't know if we need to. Now that we're kind of talking this out, because I was kind of thinking about it like an inverse mechanic, but I almost feel like what we could do, that's something we could save for longer form content. Maybe something like a raid encounter or like dungeon encounters, right? Where there's the ability to kind of cool off the heat mechanic.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that. So we might just not do the stealthy one, or the way that we can represent stealth stuff is if we present that as an option, it's a way to, stealth is always a viable, because I don't want this to just be combat encounters, right? So what we could do as well is stealth is just always a viable ability to roll in ability challenges. However, if you fail stealth rolls, you lose time off your strike clock, right? Or like something to that effect, right? Because I want we need a fail forward mechanic, right? Where when people hit ability challenges, it's not just great, we have to try again, right? So I think the idea, it might not even be just stealth encounters. It's just literally the way that we bring the stealth angle into this is like, yeah, things like stealth. Kitty, what we could do here is because I had the idea that the heat mechanic could like modify the deck DC, which I do still kind of want to do that to a certain degree, but we could also have it where stealth is always a viable stat to roll for ability checks. However, its DC is definitively modified by heat, right? So, hey, the deck DC is 17, right? Heat, and you guys want to roll stealth on this, but you've been super, super loud. You're at 5 heat. Yeah, you need to get a DC 22 to bypass or to do the stealth. Or if we do want heat to modify the deck DC across the board to represent that the facility is getting harder, we could literally have it so that way the stealth DC is doubly affected by heat. Because the louder you are, the harder it is to sneak.
Okay.
Yeah, fire away. It's all off the cuff. I'm not married to any of those ideas.
Heat affecting your deck DC. Heat should affect your stealth DC, not your deck DC. Because, well, it could possibly also... Okay, so going even further back, before we even touch on all of this stuff, if we go even further back, we back up even farther from this goddamn tapestry. I'm on the other side of the city block now. Okay. It's a very big tapestry.
Yes, yeah, huge, ginormous, clearly.
Okay, if we're if we're looking at this and we're thinking about it as game designers, the first thing I would want to do is introduce only the mechanic of heat and how it relates to strike timer, and have just that relationship played with for the players. And the stealth angle and how stealth affects heat, none of that there. Because it's you think about it like a tutorial, right? You're going to introduce a single mechanic in your tutorial, and you're going to say, here, use this mechanic. And then the next stage you get to is like, all right, so here's your second mechanic. You know, when you're playing Inscription, you have just the cards. And then after you fail the first time, you get the bones. And then you fail again. And, you know, the mechanics are slowly introduced to you. If we were to just focus on heat and how it, because players already know about the strike timer. The 10-round mechanic and gaining and losing rounds on that, they've already played with.
Right. Yeah, this is true.
Oh, but we can't really introduce heat separate from stealth, can we?
That's I think kind of the conundrum that I'm in a little bit with it, right? Is because they need a positive way to interact with the system as well.
Yeah. They are kind of bundled together. We go in, I've blasted through the door, I have high heat, and I'm just going to go straight into the next encounter. My heat determines how much extra shit is in this encounter that I have to deal with. Right. And if I have the high weapons build, if I have the high damage build, I'm going to be fine. It increases, it's a difficulty modifier. It just increases the combat difficulty. But let's say I want to do stealth. And here's the problem with D and Destiny and just how D and Destiny is designed is, first of all, everyone's good at the guns. Everyone is. They're all good at it. There is no skills versus guns. And what I'm reminded of, though, is a high chaos versus a low chaos run of Dishonored. It doesn't matter which run. I don't know. Have you played Dishonored?
I have played Dishonored.
Okay.
Yes.
Have you done a high chaos or a low chaos?
Only low chaos.
Okay, so that's one where you're sneaking everywhere. And how the game gets harder is that, A, because you have invested so much into sneaking and not being seen and leading around corners and all this other stuff, if you get into combat, you basically just fucking die, right? You can still kill people, though. You know, you just have to get your stealth kills. You have to get your takedowns. And it becomes a fantastic little Rubik's Cube that you're trying to pick apart. You're trying to figure out how to navigate the levels and how to get into areas, how to get past doors, how to get past guards, how to get past the massive War of the World tripod walkers they have.
Oh my god, I hated those.
God,
I hated those.
Just the worst. But it's a massive puzzle. It's a logistics issue. Whereas when you're doing a high chaos run, it is you're just shooting and you're throwing gadgets and you're using powers and you're, well, not really shooting so much as, you know, you're doing your stabbing and you're an artificer, right? And it becomes, when we're thinking about these two different types of gameplay, it's logistics versus instinct is how I would boil it down.
Okay.
So if we're doing a high heat run through this strike, that would be our high chaos. That's our instinct gameplay. Whereas if we're doing our stealth run of it, that is our logistics gameplay. That is a lot of planning and prepping and preparing your next move and thinking 2 moves ahead.
Yeah.
How do we actually make this 2 different forms of gameplay when everyone has the same fucking gameplay?
Yeah, I hear you. So because in my brain, I think one of the ways that you can communicate the stealth and the planning part of it is the encounters that they're going to get are probably going to be a lot more ability challenges, right? I mean, that's kind of when we're dealing with 5e as our skeleton, that's kind of what it is, right? It's going to be a lot of we're going to our more blurred mechanics, right? Where we're gonna step into narrative, and we're going to use the ability challenges to bypass encounters, circumnavigate stealth systems, to infiltrate our way into this facility. And if you're going high chaos, if you're going loud, you're going to be dealing with a lot more combat.
I think, okay, to save our brains and to make sure that we can actually run this, I think we do need to just do heat, no stealth, just heat.
Okay.
And just show, here's
how
the mechanic,
works.
And just show how heat works. Which is, and it's no stealth, and it's not even giving them an option. We could give them the option to spend strike rounds, the strike timer, to reduce the heat.
Yep.
I think that's
to represent
I think
them
that's the only interaction we need to have, which is they have the heat stat. We have heat stat. We have strike rounds remaining.
Mm-hmm.
Can spend 2 rounds. We can fiddle with the number later. To reduce heat by 1.
Yep.
When you enter each encounter, the enemies are modified based on the current heat stage.
I think that works.
Okay.
And I think one of the...
That's all we do, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, especially to make this loop, again, because if we're dealing with the strike clock as a resource, right? One of the things too, I think, to really incentivize this, you know what? Let's spend 2 rounds to reduce the heat by 1, because if we have if it affects reinforcements, right?
Yeah.
The idea is like, oh, we've got this initial fight. Well, because of heat, they had, quick response teams ready to go. So we've showed up here. We're fighting this encounter. We're trying to push our way through, especially if it's coming off of the tails of like a web mine encounter, right? So web mine goes off, heat goes up. It's an ambush encounter as they hear the web mines go off. They send people. You have the initial wave. And then now, because of increased heat, you've got more reinforcements piling on. You're going to run into a situation where, because of the way that reinforcements work, you're in an encounter for longer. You're being inundated and delayed by all of these forces. So you do need to try to keep your heat down, which means if you're going to be going loud, you need to be trying to finish your encounters as quick as possible so you can get your strike clock back up so you can spend it again to all of that jazz. And then like you're saying, it's a roll here modified by your heat stage, and then the higher the result, the tougher enemies.
So when we're thinking about an encounter, then it's at the encounter start, you set up your starting enemies. At the end of every round, or however many rounds you want to do, I would say at the end of a round, roll on the heat reinforcements table, and I just put a value here that's going to be pretty easy for us to design around, which is 1d10 plus your heat stage. Do this a number of times equal to your heat stage.
Oh,
so if they have a heat stage of 2, there's 2 rounds of reinforcements, and they're going to be tougher. If it's a heat stage of 3, it's 3 rounds, and they're going to be tougher.
Or at the very least, they're more likely to be tougher. But I like that. I think that's good. I think that's very good.
And then it's just showing the relationship between spending strike rounds and spending heat. And if they fail this strike, which, knowing our player base, realistically, they're actually probably going to succeed. They are a very combat-focused player base. But when we're talking about the mind flayers and their eventual strike, we could stack that in such a way that stealth is required, which means you are now required to interact with the stealth mechanic.
Absolutely.
But I think for this one, we should make stealth not an option. And I think that should be done in universe. We could just say the security systems are insane. There might even be a couple other things that we can do to just make the place, it's very obvious that stealth is not an option here, because players, they are going to if they have the stats for stealth, they are going to try to do stealth, but we don't want them to. We want them just to interact with the heat mechanic and to see how that works, so they can get that knowledge.
Yeah, and I think if we can still nod to our players who want to do that in here by having our ability challenges still able to utilize stealth. We just don't have like a stealth modifier that we're tracking, right? There's no like concealment in number track that we're keeping a handle on. I think that's still fine. But yeah, especially if we have cards or encounters that are trying to bypass parts of the security system, I think that.
Well, how many encounters are you imagining in this strike? And what's your encounter? Are you doing a linear path? Are you going to do randomized in tables or cards? What's the encounter structure of the strike look like to you?
Yeah, that's I guess been a little bit more nebulous in my noggin. I think I want the potential for encounters to be very high, because I do also want to lean into ability challenges as well. So I don't think that every encounter.
Have I told you how much I hate ability challenges?
Have you? I don't think so.
Have I told you I genuinely fucking hate ability challenges.
Talk to me. Why do you hate ability challenges?
Because it's so brain dead, and we make the dice roll, we look at the result, and we see if you succeed. There's no, and especially with just how they've developed over the past couple of years, which is that you have certain GMs that are going to rule certain actions as certain abilities. We have other GMs who they just let the player say, I'm going to use stealth, and the GM's like, okay, roll stealth, which means in those instances, the players are just going to pick their best abilities and roll those.
Right. No.
And
yeah.
It's so brain dead. And ability challenges work for things that don't need interaction. If you're trying to craft a weapon, we don't need 6 stages of interaction here. We can just roll the dice, see if you get as many successes as you need before you get as many failures, and we're done. That's it. That's all we need to do. Because then we can look at the outcome of the challenge, and we can make a narrative out of that. But when we're looking at things like navigating a dungeon or something like that, I fucking hate ability challenges much.
Well, let's play around with some different mechanics then. Because I think too, one of the other things that we can do is present players with choices, and this can also help give us a nod. Help build that mental arena, the scenery of stealth versus going loud, right? Because I did mention before, I kind of like the idea of the party. Another bit of risk for them to take on is they can try to go to the generator room, do a really hard encounter, and if they succeed, they can turn off the layer actions, right? I think that could be very interesting. And the way that we could do that is like a very minorly branching path, right? So you go to step 1, and then at step 1, there's like step 1A and step 1B, and you figure out which one of those you're going to do based on presenting the characters an option, right? Step 1A and step 1B is you move into the interior corridor of Selnix's lair after having gotten the door open. You have arrived. You can see, you can hear the sounds of the Elixni chittering through the facility, all of the arc energy crackling through the walls, and following along that, you can see that there are cables hooked up to some of these arc emitters that are following down one particular tunnel route, but you can see that the main passageway leads on ahead, and they could go, ooh, let's follow let's follow the arc route, especially if we put this choice after an encounter where they're getting hit by the layer action, right? That's just happening, so they move in, they take care of an initial patrol, they get past the door, they run inside. There's some an additional wave of guards that's fighting them. It's not really too bad of an encounter, but as they're fighting it, this is the encounter that they're interacting with the layer mechanic, which is the bolts of arc energy that hit them and punish them for grouping up, say. And then immediately after that, we described that, hey, those arc emitters that you saw that were bolting you during the entire fight, you can see where their power cables go. Or you can also see where, maybe there were some who narratively they get away, right? People flee the encounter, and you can see that they're heading deeper into the facility. So what do, right? Do you chase after? Do you go deeper into the facility, or do you go, do you go try to follow the arc emitters, right? And some of them might go, and depending on that choice, we're just hitting them with devil's bargains, right? So the idea is that, right, like this encounter is like early warning, right? So, if you don't completely wipe them, they run away, and they're going to go raise the alarm.
Yeah.
And maybe, yeah.
So what I've written down here is, I didn't want to interrupt your babbling.
No,
you interrupted it yourself. That's not me. You did that.
Yeah. You're always allowed to interrupt me, Kit Kat. You know how this works. You're fine.
Okay. So, the first encounter, if we simplify this, because especially if we just want to show the relation between these mechanics, we can simplify this, and then we can make it way more complicated, and we can have way more involved bosses and dossiers in the future. Selnix's baby intro, baby's first heat-based strike.
People in the community hear that, and they're going to lose their minds. Like, Selnix is the baby!
Yeah.
But it's true. It's true.
So, encounter 2, it's either we present them with the choice immediately, or we give them an encounter 2, which it could be, I don't know, fight a bunch of pikes indoor, like a little bit like the Cabal strike where you have to fight Goliath tanks in the hangar or whatever.
Inside, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely, I would love to have them fight in a hangar. That would be really cool.
So the thing is, though, if we're going to have them fight enemies here, I'm going to take the layer action off of first encounter in a big garage.
Sure.
And we're going to have the same mechanic, which is just heat +1 if you don't do it fast. Which is, this is our equivalent of doing stealth in the scenario where everyone is guns.
Yep. You need to kill everyone quickly. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna have the punk pikes and snipers in this one. And this will also give us the opportunity. So heat +1 if you don't. So encounter 1, fight past the door, get past the guards. Heat +1 if you don't defeat all the enemies by the end of round 1. Encounter 2, fight enemies in a big garage. There's punk pikes and snipers. We have our layer action that comes into effect here, which is whatever defensive installments you want on initiative count 20, blah, 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 they happen. You said arc emitters before, so that's just what I wrote down.
Yep.
Same rule, heat +1 if you don't defeat all enemies at the end of round 1. Encounter 3, then, would be choose to either pursue Selnix, because we can possibly have him taunting them during this previous encounter.
He's over intercoms or something.
Or divert to destroy the power source of the layer actions.
Mm-hmm.
We could, if you're interested, split the party.
Ooh. Okay.
Which a party split mechanic, other than just building a map that allows you to make this choice, and you can run off on that side, and you guys can go run off on that side to fight Selnix in that corner while you're doing the arc emitters in that corner, which could be really interesting, and that doesn't necessarily need to be something Okay, now that I've said it out loud, encounter 3 is you pursue Selniks, but in this encounter, so if you imagine our maps, just imagine half of that map is where you fight Selniks, but the other half is the side passage you can take to, while Selniks is fighting you, try to destroy the arc emitters that are causing the layer actions.
Interesting. Okay.
But if we want to keep the choice,
I would kind of like to do the choice.
If we want to keep the choice, then what I recommend we doing here, which is choose to either pursue Selniks or divert to destroy the power source of the layer actions. Gain +1 heat if you divert.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you're also... So now, let's say... What we have to imagine here is, let's say in encounter 1, let's say it takes them 2 rounds to get through that. So now their strike counts at 8.
Yep.
-2. And they have the +1 heat. And then, so we get into encounter 3, and that's going to take them 3 rounds. Now they're at 5.
Well, don't forget, whenever they complete an encounter... hang on, let's go look at our strike mechanics, because there's already ways for them baseline to get more strikes, or more strike rounds. I think just completing encounters gives you rounds, and then of course if you do it flawlessly, nobody goes down, you get, because it's like, I think if you just every time you complete an encounter, you get 2 turns, and then if you complete it flawlessly, you get 4. I could be wrong. It might be 1 in 3.
Types of sessions is what we're looking at.
Yeah. Where are you? Is that in the patrol content?
Yeah, server mechanics types of sessions. So a strike, complete within 10 rounds. Completing an encounter awards the party with 3. With no down PCs awards 5. They are very generous with those numbers. I almost want to make it so that if you complete an encounter, you get 2 rounds, because we assume that you will finish encounters, and an average encounter you'll finish in 2 to 3 rounds.
Okay.
And I think for a strike, we really should be emphasizing efficiency. There's no accounting for bad luck, though, but this is a narrative game, and if you have bad luck, and your narrative is that you fail the strike because of bad luck, this is not a skill-based game. There's no skill in rolling dice. Your cat is just as likely to roll a 20 as an earthquake is to roll a 20.
Right. Exactly. And both are also have their own skill levels of knocking things off of shelves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is an amount of skill when you're managing your odds and stuff like that, but just like in Pokemon Pocket, sometimes it comes down to a coin flip and there's nothing you can do about it. And there's no skill in rolling dice. Sometimes it just comes down to a damage roll and you don't roll high enough, and that's just how it is. It doesn't mean you're a bad player, and it doesn't mean you played poorly, because the skill of a tabletop storytelling game is how well you translate those dice into narrative and how well you're able to adapt your character's narrative to what's going on. So I guess the phrase of emphasizing efficiency isn't the right phrase to have if we reduce the strike rounds to 2 instead of awarding 3. We award 2.
So here's my thinking.
That's the right phrasing. I think the phrasing...
Here's my thinking. We could still keep it 3 and 5. We can also just increase our heat because there's more than one way to skin a cat. And I think if we, once you give your player base something, taking it away always feels bad. So if they're looking at a strike, and I guarantee you that when we put that up on the story missions or LFG for the strike, wherever we put the synopsis for the strike, right? If they're looking at it and going, "Oh, cool, we can budget for we need to win our encounters by round 2," in order to in round 2 or round 3 or whatever, in order to have at least a net, if we win by round 2, that's a net positive. If it's round 3, it's a net neutral. Anything longer than that, we're slowly dying, right? But if we keep it at 3 and 5, the other thing that we can do is just have the heat go up at a larger rate, which is something that they will, first of all, feel immediately. There's none of this like, we can take this nickel and dime heat, not really a problem, right? If we do increase the heat, then we can still reward them by going fast, because then they're getting the extra rounds to spend to decrease their heat. But that's their call, right? And that might not be a call that they're most informed to make until they get to the Selniks fight and they see, we're at heat 6 in the Selniks fight, and these enemies just do not stop coming. This is a problem. This is a huge problem. So then the next time they go through, they go, okay, we still need to go fast. We're still going as fast and loud as we can. We're not going to take the risky heat choices. And when we finish these, because we're keeping our heat lower, these lower difficulty encounters, when we finish them at a higher delta, and we're getting more rounds, then, then that's the other way to play that. And I think that's the two routes you can go, right? You can go, I want to maximize I recognize that this final encounter is going to be super difficult. I don't care how difficult it is. I just need rounds to cook. Then they can go high heat, fly through encounters, and get to the end and just have a brutal Selniks fight, right? Or they can go, you know what? We don't need as high of a strike clock. If we can just kind of not ambush Selniks, but get to the point where we're fighting him on more equal terms, right? And I think that still gives our players, because we just make the mechanic open from the beginning. Hey, you can spend 2 rounds to reduce heat by 1. That tells them we need to go as fast as possible. We need to finish these encounters as quick as possible. And we need to do this flawlessly so we have the rounds in order to mitigate this heat that's going up. I think that's a good introduction to the mechanic.
Okay.
And it still gives them the variance of play of going, fuck your heat mechanic. I don't care. I'm him. We'll just
and we need 1 round to kill Selniks.
Yeah, exactly. But then your other teams might look at that and go, okay, you know what? Low and slow is the name of the game. We're gonna go in. We're gonna do these. We're gonna finish these encounters.
Okay, so if we're not doing the stealth thing, but we do have the timer to reduce the heat rounds. Okay. God, it's getting to the point where it's kind of hard to imagine what's even happening here and what the relationship between all of this is.
Oh, really? Okay. Talk to me.
Oh, it's just because it's just my brain and handling this sort of thing. Okay.
I got you.
Right now, with our encounter 1, it's you get the door. Heat +1 if you don't defeat all the enemies by the end of round 1. A universal mechanic is you can spend 2 rounds to reduce heat by 1. You've gained 3 rounds by completing this encounter without anyone dying. You can just spend the 1 to reduce your heat by 1. You're back to 0.
Yep. Quick question as well. Should we make heat a player-facing number, kind of like Gorgon's Gaze? They don't know what it means, but do we make heat player-facing? I think we should straight
up tell them what it means, because out of game, in our real life meat space, we need game terms to talk to each other, because we don't live in that world. But as
absolutely.
guardian running through this facility, hearing the alarms go off and everything like that, you know what heat you're at. It's not a mechanic, but you know what heat you're at.
It's like going through. It's like high chaos or low chaos Dishonored, right? Like you recognize when you're going high chaos, they know what to expect, and so they've got bigger defenses, because they know that John Dishonored is gonna come rocking down this road at some point and try to kill them all.
And you being John Dishonored, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Corvo.
And before
John
I get
Dishonored.
added, I was gonna say I know his name is Corvo.
I know.
John Dishonored is funny.
John Dishonored is really funny. It's it's like John Halo, which is hilarious
John
because his
Halo,
name
yes.
is John.
John. Yep.
But anyways, so you, Corvo, in the universe, it's not a number that pops into your head, but when you see 7 squads trying to take you down, you're like, oh, I got some pretty high heat on me, don't I? It's a
I've made a lot of noise.
It's a number for us players, because we don't live in that world. But I don't need a number to know I have heat on me when 4 fucking squad cars roll up on me, right?
Yep,
like,
exactly.
It's if God was playing me, God would be like, oh, my heat is at 4, huh?
Yep, exactly. Okay, great. So yeah, we do make heat a player-facing mechanic, and we obviously tell them what this means, right? And we can write like a little box blurb that's just like a little quoted text to read out about heat. Heat is our number to represent the amount of noise and attention that you're drawing through moving through the facility, and the higher it goes, the more reinforcements and the more difficult the challenges you face are going to be, as the defenders can get a bead on you where you are and prepare accordingly. So yeah. And then that same way too, we can explain the spend 2 rounds to reduce heat by 1. That's you taking side routes, right? That's you taking side routes or diverting patrols or, avoiding enemy movements and sensors, right? We can just assume that you do these things. There's no need for an ability challenge because Kitty hates them so much.
Well, I did put the ability challenge later on because this is actually a point where an ability challenge matters. Or is a good use of an ability challenge, is what I would say.
Sure.
And I do think an ability challenge, it works better when there's a very limited number of ability checks you can make. Because if you can make any ability check, the players are just going to pick their best ones, and it's not an ability challenge anymore. It's just roll your highest modifier.
Yeah, it's like in Fallout New Vegas or in other games where it's like, hey, you're talking to this person. You can either, if you have high enough charisma, you can just talk to them. But also, if you know your explosives really well, you can convince, Old Man Willie Pete to actually let you use his dynamite to defend Good Springs, right?
Because he needs to know you're not going to blow yourself up.
Exactly. Right.
But anyways,
exactly.
So encounter 1, fight Fedora, heat +1, but you can spend the 2 rounds to reduce that to 0. You're still at a net gain of +1 strike rounds. Or actually, you're at a net gain of 0 because you have spent the 1 round, but then you gained 1 back, and your heat is at 0. You're at a neutral level here, and that's assuming everything goes well. And this being one of the basic encounters I'm imagining it being, it's very likely. Again, it's only going to take them the 1 round to fight off all the enemies here.
Yeah.
Or it'll take them the 2 rounds. My bad, because you get the 3, and it's fine.
Yeah.
Anyways. Encounter 2 is at the big garage fight. That's when we introduce the layer action. And this one I actually wrote heat +2 if you don't defeat all the enemies by round 1. Which is very unrealistic. We're dealing with punk pikes, we're dealing with snipers, just the health on the field. You're basically guaranteed to not do this. Which is why I want the heat +2 here, because I want them to actually have to manage this resource. If we keep having it be heat +1 and we keep having it be average
That's my
fights,
thoughts exactly.
Yeah, they're not gonna actually have to manage the mechanic. So when they come into encounter 3, which isn't an encounter, it's a choice. It's where they can either follow, you tell them as a GM, I would just straight up tell them, because again, when we're dealing with TTRPG land, how you talk to the players is just reflective of how the characters are talking to themselves in universe. We don't live in that universe, but you as a GM, you say to them, you can either follow these power cables back to the source and possibly turn off any other arc emitters in this facility, or you can go straight to Selnix at this point. And if you do the diversion, you can, like I said, possibly turn off all the arc emitters in this facility, but you're going to be doing another combat, and you're going to be doing more heat stuff.
Yep.
We give them that choice. That sends them to 3B, which is destroy the generator. And here's where I actually put an ability challenge, which is you get to the generator and you either succeed on a technology ability challenge or do a combat. It's one or the other. And if you succeed on the ability challenge, it's you get in there, the tech guy looks at it, flips a couple switches, yanks this cable, it's disabled.
Yep.
They know how to destroy this machine, and that's what the tech ability challenge is. And if you don't know how to destroy the machine, you can still destroy it, but the enemies are going to have enough time to catch up to you, and that's where the combat comes in.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And I like it too that it could also be that, right, the nature of it, because I do like the idea that there's like a servitor that's running the facility, right, or handling the power of the facility, because that is just how the Elixni like to do things, right? They shove a servitor in. Also makes sense, right? Maybe also the part of the reason, lore reason why Stelnix is now to the size of like a baron, right? He's a big old boy. He's managed to soup up this servitor, attach it to I do like the idea that it's basically jump ship drives, right? So they've basically created this power generator that works off of
server.
They've overclocked a server.
And the Archimetters are not the servitor's not quote unquote powering them. The Archimetters are the exhaust ports of the servitor.
And it literally just happens to work. And again, part of this whole, Mad Max kind of Elixni warband we have is that's kill two stones with one bird, right? Hey, we got to vent all this excess arc electricity around.
You're generating so much. You are generating so much electricity. You call up the local whatever plant that you say, please turn all your furnaces on high blast. We need to use this electricity. We have nowhere to store it, and if it goes into the grid's going to explode. Yep.
And they've also recognized, though, that there's another way for them to vent it is as a defense system, right?
Yeah.
They can turn on arc grids to block pathways, or just bolt, because there's a servitor at the core of it, has some control over it, and it can just go, I see where you are, lightning bolts, and can use it as a defense mechanism. And otherwise, it's just venting out. They're using it to charge the punk pikes. They're using it to run their defensive systems, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But that excess energy's gotta go somewhere.
So then they do that. They actually do the ability challenge, or they do the combat. That's their choice that they end up having here. And if
they fail the ability challenge, they have to do the combat anyway,
yes.
And we can also increase heat because it's taking time. Or even if they attempt to, we could even make that a cost to the choice, right? Is the tech ability challenge obviously means you might not get heat because you're not going to have that the heat mechanic that you've been dealing with. But if you attempt the tech ability challenge and fail, you lose strike clock time. Because it's going to take you time. It's not as easy as walking up and going, hit all the red ones. They're all red, right? You're having to handle this appropriately. Because if you fail this, there's the chance it might explode badly. But yeah, strike clock -1 if you succeed. So there's a risk. Yeah.
So when they go to the generator, they can attempt the ability challenge. If they succeed, they only get the strike -1. That's because they just spent the one round to go do that kind of situation. Yep. That was it. If they fail, they go into the combat. It's heat +2 if they don't defeat all the enemies by the end of round 1, and no matter what, it is strike -2. Because you're going to spend time in actually, we're going to make it strike -1 in addition to whatever was spent on the combat. No matter what, it is strike -1 to take this option.
Yep.
And
because you're literally diverting time.
Yeah. Yep. So when you make the choice, you go to the generator. No matter what you do, it's strike -1. If you end up in the combat, it's heat +2 if you don't defeat all the enemies within round 1. But otherwise, the choice itself doesn't inherently give you heat. It just drains your strike clock.
Yep.
And then when we get to Selnix, so Selnix, what I am worried about is a snowball effect because we were talking about how, like, at the end of a round, you roll on the heat reinforcements tables. You do this number of times equal to the stages of heat that you have, and higher values are going to give you tougher enemies. If we introduce that throughout the entirety of the strike, it can very easily snowball into...
right, because reinforcements slow down your combats, which means you're getting more... Yeah, your strike...
So I'm thinking that mechanic should only be on our final boss here.
That makes sense, because the rest of it is basically almost like a combat and skill montage of flying through this facility and seeing what choices you made before you go fight the big guy.
Yeah, and then your choices will come back to bite you in the butt.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So if we have this as our basic setup, at this point, all we have to do is figure out what enemies and what maps we're going to use for all of these encounters. And we have to work on a little bit of that servitor and layer actions and how that functions. And be a little bit more careful about how the lore of this works as well, because with New Reese and all of that, I can see people wanting to investigate this facility for ether production for New Reese. And I'm not saying we can't let them do that. I'm just saying that's what they're going to want to do if you introduce the lore of Selnix did something to supercharge the servitor. What is that? And how could any investigation or reverse engineering or techie thingy we can do with that works, and having that all ready before we run the strike?
Sure. My basic vibes on that, it's I don't really actually see that as too much of a deviation from the lore, because we've always understood that really what servitors need, if you think about the big ether resupply patrol or public event that we used to do in D2 vanilla, right? One of the things that they're yapping at you about while you're doing that is part of the reason why this is a public event at all is because it's notably draining the local power supply, because it's a big servitor. And so we know that for the Elixian, for servitors, power equals ether. They just have to get a servitor of commensurate size to a relevant power source to be able to turn it into ether. And I think Selnix being this Mad Max vehicle jockey kind of warmonger has basically done the 2 + 2 = 4 of jump ships need a lot of power to run. NLS drives require a lot of power to run. So if I'm able to take those jump drives, that I've been getting from other ships, turn them into a generator, because it's already basically what they are, hook them up to a big servitor, and just vent the excess energy that it can't use, which for us, we'll just use to run the rest of the facility. Bada bing, bada boom, I can make tons and tons of ether, and all I need is an LS fuel, which I'm getting by stealing people's ships. So,
I would love to have the lore that what Selnix is doing here is in traditional Elixian society is considered sacrilege.
Yeah,
because you're taking the avatar of your god and you're turning it into a car battery. Yeah. If we took Jesus Christ and we made him power my car to go to work, what are you doing? What are you doing? Yeah.
And it was even like, hey, we reckon, oh, hey, my, the avatar of my god is capable of producing this stuff that I need to live, right? And we know that it needs to siphon off of power. That's totally fine. You're then taking it the pragmatic sacrilege route of where it's like, okay, so we very carefully siphon power and make sure that they have the resources they need in order to make ether. Very well, very good. And then this guy's basically like, yeah, what if I hooked them up to 20 car batteries and just overcharged it? Genuinely, in the description that we give of that servitor in the fight, or even in just the scenery of the room that they go into, the servitor could be in pain, right? Or scarcely able to control the power.
And I really like that because I can easily imagine players really wanting to jump on oh my god, this is going to be a great resource for New Reese. And they come to New Reese and they say, all right, so here's my plan on how to turn Jesus Christ or the Prophet Muhammad or, whoever into your battery, your generator, and and New Reese is just like, excuse me?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
No, this is, what are you, no. And they have to understand that New Reese is its own governing body, and they might be doing things in a way that you're sitting over here going like, why? Because you don't have the cultural context that they have for why they are not going to sit here and hook their servitors up to 12 different skiff engines to overproduce ether.
Yep. Absolutely. No, I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. Big fan of that.
Okay. So yeah, now it's just fleshing out all the individual details of all of these encounters. But we've got the basics of how the heat is going to work and what it's going to affect and what players can do to affect their heat. So now we would just go into our VF tools for encounters, do a bunch of copy pasting, fill out stuff for starting enemies and reinforcement tables, and we're good to go. We can even use the general reinforcement tables for a lot of this too.
Genuinely. We can, and for we can cut out some of the, so that way it's still a challenging strike, cut out some of the smaller ones, but make having the lower reinforcement table results. Yeah. I see what you're doing. That works perfectly. Yeah, exactly.
Because our normal reinforcement tables, they are a D100, and the higher, and on those tables, the higher the number is, the tougher the enemies, the more likely you are to roll elites, majors, even ultras. And so what we could do is, you roll on reinforcements, it's 1D100 plus 10 times whatever your heat stage is. So if your heat stage is 3, it's 1D100 plus 30, which means you're guaranteed to not get the baby encounters that are like 4 minions or 6 soldiers. You're guaranteed to not get those, because with your modifier, you're going squarely for the bottom end of the middle of the table, the average, the bottom end of average.
Yep.
So that math works out there, and then we don't even have to make reinforcement tables. We can just use the basic ones that we use in all of our sessions.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, fantastic.